Hey folks, Eddie from Totally Wired Guitars here, and I was just in the middle of building out this gorgeous charcoal frost metallic 65 style Jaguar, and I thought it's high time we talk about Partscasters. So we're going to be talking about why you should or shouldn't be building a Partscaster, things that you should consider such as the cost, the amount of time that it's going to take, the skills, expertise, and tools that you're going to need if you're going to try to do it yourself. Also, we're going to be talking about common pain points that arise in building Partscasters. I'm also going to be talking about the lowest lift and potentially most affordable path for people who do want to try to do it themselves, as well as my recommendations and resources for where to get your parts, who to do your finishing if you're not going to do it yourself. And lastly, if you or your tech did a stellar job of putting together your dream guitar, how can you expect it to compare to something like a Fender custom shop or even an American vintage series guitar? And in the end, is it worth it? Without further ado, let's dive into it. Now, as an offset guitar specialist and tech, one of the things that clients most often ask me to do for them is to assemble their dream guitars. Now, whether they have commissioned me to direct the whole process from the ordering of parts to the final build, or bringing me a Partscaster that they had gotten started but weren't quite able to dial in right, there are a multitude of reasons that these folks had gone the direction of doing a Partscaster rather than buying an off-the-shelf, readily available guitar. Two of the biggest considerations are the fact that what they have in their mind for the guitar they want is not actually readily available. They have tried out the various options that are out there and none quite meet the exact criteria that they want. And the other is that folks just love building Partscaster. They enjoy the process. They enjoy learning through the building. They enjoy experimenting with different pickups and parts and bodies and necks and hardware. One of the main reasons that I even became an offset guitar tech and specialist to begin with was through the attempt at building my very own Partscaster. Back in, I believe that was 2008 or 2009, I had bought one of the Mark Jenny or MJT kits that he was selling at the time. It was quite affordable back then. I think it was something like maybe $700, $600 or $700 for both a body and neck that were finished in nitro, in any color and any kind of wear you want, whether that was closet clean, which is basically their version of new, or a heavy relic. And I decided to go with like a medium relic at the time. And none of my other offsets up until that point really could fit that bill in that, less than $1,500 price range. Now, it was through that process and all of the other builds that I did in quick succession after that first build that I realized I really enjoy building guitars. And it wasn't long after that that people, friends of mine in my music scene here, started to ask me to build guitars for them as well as their bandmates. While the prospect of building out your own dream guitar is super exciting, there is a lot of things that you need to consider. The first thing is the cost. A little while ago, I had released a video talking about the insane rising costs of aftermarket parts, and that relates directly to this conversation about Partscasters. It's no longer the late 2000s, and so things have gotten a lot more expensive, and doing a good nitro finished custom build, if you're not doing all of that finishing work and all of the assembly and setup work yourself, it's going to be super difficult to build out a quality instrument under $1,000. Now, bringing the focus of that topic into context here, if you are trying to use genuine Fender parts such as a neck or a body, and more so if you are hoping to find nitro finished parts in a price range that is affordable, that is getting harder and harder as time passes. The average nitro finished neck now, after taxes and shipping is just about, if not a little bit more than $1,000. So doing the math, Partscasters start to make a lot more sense when you start to consider buying raw parts that you are going to finish yourself from aftermarket retailers such as All Parts or Warmith or Musicraft, and even finished items, finished necks like from Guitar Mill or All Parts tend to be less than half of the cost of those genuine Fender parts. Now, if you do not have the skills or expertise or tools to do all of the assembly and setup work yourself, then there is even more cost because you now are going to have to pay a tech's either hourly rate or their build rate for building custom guitars. Even if you are determined to do it yourself, one big thing for you to consider is what kind of tools you have to get the job done right. Now, I always tell folks that there is getting the job done and getting the job done right. And a lot of the clients that start their Partscaster builds themselves and don't quite get to the finish line or end up with a satisfactory end product are folks who don't have the necessary and specialized luthier tools or guitar tech tools that are required for this kind of involved work. So some tools that come to mind are tools for doing fret work, nut work, electronics work. All of those things are additional costs that, if this is going to be a one and done for you, is going to result in an exorbitant cost in tools if you decide at the end of it that you did not enjoy the process and that you probably are not going to be building any more Partscasters in the future. That, and also if you are considering doing aspects of the build, such as the finishing work yourself, you definitely are going to need an appropriate space to get that job done. Another thing to consider is the amount of time it's going to take to do a build. Now, if you are working from prefab parts such as genuine Fender or Squier or ones that are available to buy it now, that's obviously going to take a lot less time than if you are commissioning a custom built body, a custom finished body or neck. The amount of time that it takes, for example, for lacquer to cure, as well as the queue and lead time of these various servicers, can range from 4 weeks all the way to 24, sometimes the majority of a year before you will get to see those parts show up at your door. And if you're planning to do a nitro finish yourself, you're probably going to need to wait a minimum of 2 weeks, but ideally 4 to 8 weeks for that nitro to fully cure before you do the final wet sanding and polishing of your body or neck. Now, after considering all those things, and for you, it makes sense to still go the path of a Partscaster, then I would love to share a number of pain points with you that you should come to expect if you are going to be doing the build yourself. Now, the first thing definitely to consider is compatibility. There have been a number of times over the years where I am trying out new manufacturers or new finishers where the specs for the bodies do not quite line up with the readily available parts that you can get, such as pick guards, control plates, and things like that. And those are going to take some finagling and alterations to those parts to get them to fit properly. One of the most common ones is having to open up the neck pockets because a standard Fender size neck will not fit without you sanding the edges of those neck pockets. One of the biggest reasons why that happens is because there is overspray, there's extra paint in those pockets, or sometimes because of humidity and weather, the wood has expanded. You can end up with up to a millimeter or more right, that you need to shave away in order for you to properly install the neck. And if it's a finished body, the next pain point is that if you're trying to do a fully clean, brand new type of look to your build, unfortunately, one of the most common things that happens when you are building out a guitar is that the paint around the neck pocket will chip off. And that's not even because the neck pocket is a little too tight. It partially has to do with how hard the nitro is after it's cured. If it is still in a kind of premature state of curing, it's definitely going to more easily come off at that point. Even when you are just tightening up, the bolts to your neck. Now, another factor related to that you very likely could experience if building out a Partscaster from aftermarket parts is that on offsets specifically, like for Jazzmasters and Jaguars, the routes are cut a bit off spec. One of the most common examples of this is the tremolo or vibrato route. A lot of them often are really off spec as compared to the size of the routes on a genuine Fender body. And so what folks will then experience after they thought that they had aligned the vibrato properly before drilling the mounting holes, they will find that the edges of the pivoting plates underneath to be catching the walls of the vibrato, which then will require you to route out that vibrato route a bit more, whether it's using a router or a Dremel or even just sandpaper and a block. You may also find that the scale and dimensions, depending on who you go with, are also off spec. One of the most common things that I have seen from clients are those who tried to buy budget pick guards, for example, and the pick guards are maybe cut just a tiny bit too small. And so you actually see a bit of a gap and some of this control route peeking out. Another pain point is if you got yourself a matching headstock, there is a very likely chance that you are going to have to ream out the tuner holes for the bushings for your tuners to fit, even if you're using genuine Fender necks that maybe you yourself have removed the bushings from to go get refinished. You will find that once it comes back to you, you're going to have to remove a bit of that finish if you don't want it to completely chip off when you try to reinstall those bushings. And sometimes if the finisher hasn't allowed enough time for the headstock finish to cure, then you will find that if you try to use a standard reaming tool, such as something like this, that huge chunks of finish are just going to be removed. And if you are trying to go for a closet clean or factory new type of build, that is not something that you can easily repair without having to send back to your finishers or redo yourself if you are spraying your own finish. Now, the biggest advice that I have for folks, if it's possible, is don't cheap out. Now, obviously, this is going to depend on your budget. And if you have the ability to wait and just save up more and go with higher quality pickups, hardware, tools for the build, every single time you are going to thank yourself for having waited until you could afford those parts instead of cheaping out to just get the build done. There is that saying to buy nice or buy twice, and it is very, very true in this instance. I have had a number of clients who, for example, tried to cheap out and save like $50 by buying a classic player vibrato instead of an American vintage reissue tremolo, and the quality is noticeable. The most likely scenario for those folks is they will end up getting fed up with the cheaper quality components that they bought, have to sell them at a fraction of the price that they bought them for, and then actually then spend the money on the higher quality parts that they should have just gotten from the beginning. This also extends to the husk of the guitar itself. Sometimes folks think that they should just go on AliExpress or Temu or something and order guitar parts for the cheapest amount, and the amount that you pay unfortunately does correlate to the quality that you will get. A little while ago, I tried to experiment by ordering a number of those blocks and binding Jaguar necks from China. These things are as cheap as like $50 sometimes, and I thought, man, this can't be that bad. But the reality was, they are that bad. Some of the heels, for example, were not even the appropriate shape. Some of the heels were way too wide to fit in a standard Fender, neck pocket. The tuner holes for the bushings were oversized, and so you couldn't even put vintage style tuners in without using larger conversion bushings. And then at worst, you'll find twists in the neck or truss rods that don't work. And so cheaping out on basically the body and soul of your guitar is definitely not ideal. In fact, I had an idea for a video to do just that, so I could show you all exactly all of the issues that I run into by trying to use the cheapest parts that I could find. If you want to see that video, definitely let me know down in the comments. Now, for those who aren't ready to commit to a full nitro finish build, I would definitely say that the lowest lift path towards a quality and well-playing Partscaster that you can start to play from day one is definitely going to be one of your Squier classic vibe or vintage modified. All of the mounting holes are already drilled for you. All of the routes are already perfectly done for you. You can easily drop in a higher quality neck without any modifications. And sometimes you can find those in cool, rare custom colors such as shell pink, charcoal frost, burgundy mist. It's crazy what is available out there, especially when you start to dig into international markets. And a lot of times you can buy a whole guitar for not that much more money than you would pay for just a nitro finished body, where you're going to have to do a lot of that preparatory work that isn't exactly a cakewalk to get right your first time around. Now, moving on to my recommendations for where you should get your parts depending on your needs. Now, if you are on that same level where you are about to pull the trigger on maybe a Squier and thinking about parting it out because you don't want to have to deal with, aligning the tremolo just right to drill all of the holes that are needed, then I would recommend Rosser guitars. They come with all of those mounting holes pre-drilled for you. They just started to offer a gloss nitrocellulose option for only like $360, and it only takes about 6 weeks for you to get it, which is actually really good as compared to his competitors. One caveat that I have read from folks regarding his bodies, though those posts were a bit old, so take this with a grain of salt, is that sometimes hardware and accessories such as pick guards and things don't line up perfectly. So definitely watch out for that, and feel free to reach out to him. Michael at Rosser Guitars has always been super responsive to me, and he has been great to work with on the few things that I have worked with his bodies on. Now, if you were looking for the most vintage accurate bodies, I have found none that are better than Tone Bomb up in Canada. They are basically a 1-1 recreation of Fender offset bodies such as your Jazzmaster and Jaguar. I find that the round over, as well as the depth of the tummy cut and just the overall shape is virtually identical to that of your American Vintage Reissue series. And all of the hardware and control plates and pick guards that I've tried to put on those tone bomb bodies have always been a perfect fit with no issues whatsoever. Now, other sources for bodies to consider are Guitar Mill. They do a really great job, especially with regards to finishing work. My only caveat with them is that for me, I can definitely tell that the overall shape of the bodies is a little bit off from the way a vintage or even an AVRI Fender Jaguar Jazzmaster should be. It's a little bit more extreme in the lower bout of a curve, and the forearm contour I have found on those Guitar Mill bodies are cut more like a Strat rather than an actual Jazzmaster or Jaguar, which is much more gradual. That is obviously up to your own preference, whether you care about something like that or not. There's obviously also MJT or Mark Jenny. They have been in the game for way before even I got into it, and they do custom colored bodies for a pretty fair price. A lot of them going up for auction, so you can get them for cheaper than a lot of buy it now bodies that you can find. One note that I have discovered about the MJT bodies, particularly from the past couple of years, is that they moved over to doing their own in-house manufacturing instead of using the Wildwood manufacturing bodies they used to. The Wildwood manufacturing bodies that they used to have were almost a 1-1 recreation of Fender, Jazzmaster, and Jaguar bodies. The newer ones made by USA Custom Guitars I found are a little bit oversized, like maybe by as much as 10, maybe a little bit more, 10% or more. And so pick guards are going to look a little bit more shrunken on those bodies. And unfortunately, they are one of the makers where I have found that I do routinely have to open up people's vibrato routes, because the vibrato route on those bodies is a little bit too short to accommodate, a standard AVRI style vibrato. I've also worked with Bloom Doom guitars, as well as Show Me Nitro Finishes. That's Caleb, who used to be part of the Bloom Doom Guitars team. Both Dustin and Caleb have done fantastic work for me, and they are actually ex-MJT guys. They used to work over at MJT and started their own thing a couple of years ago. Ironically, they still use the Wildwood manufacturing bodies that MJT used to. And so if you want a closer to accurate, body shape and spec, you can definitely go with one of those guys. I highly recommend Caleb at Show Me Nitro Finishes. He has routinely done really fantastic work for me. And if anything has ever gone wrong, he's been super responsive and helpful in fixing those issues for me. So definitely check him out. And then there's also Copacetic Customs down in Texas. Christian does awesome work, and he's got a number of unique offerings with regards to fully built Partscasters that he does, and he does some really, really cool finishing work. Now, as far as necks go, if you're on a budget, look no further than All Parts, right? All Parts makes some of the best, if not the best, necks out there, especially if you can find one that is the specification that you want. Those necks are made in Japan, and it's a little known secret that All Parts and Fender Japan do share some manufacturing, and the quality of those All Parts necks are virtually identical to the stellar quality that I have found on all of the Fender Japan necks. The frets are usually level, and they don't need that much additional work to them, aside from potentially adding your own nut, drilling your own mounting holes for the neck mounting screws and all of that. But they just feel so good in hand. If you do not want to do the finishing work on raw parts yourself, they do offer finished necks, as well as you can look to some places like Aurora Customs or 1950s Finishes. They're both on Reverb and eBay, and they do these awesome satin nitro finish necks for like a really affordable price, like something like $330 or $350 with tuners and the string tree and nut pre-installed, and all of the fret work has already been done. They're an awesome resource for necks. If you have more specific needs for the profile and the type of frets and all of that for a neck that you have in mind, you've also got Warmouth, which is probably the most well-known one. You've got Musicraft out in New Jersey. They've always done really, really great work for me anytime that I've ordered directly from them. And stemming from Musicraft, there is Park Lane Guitars. The founder of Park Lane Guitars, I believe, is the reason why Musicraft became such a well-known and renowned company for their necks, is because of his work. And lastly, if you just want something that is ready to go without having to do any work, you can keep your eyes on the Stratosphere, which again, based on my previous video, their parts are getting more and more expensive for the genuine Fender necks that already have like tuners and nuts installed. If you're willing to gamble, you can keep your eyes peeled on MIRC and their conglomerates. They sell B-stock parts that a number of different sellers are like affiliates of. If you see necks that are stamped used on the back, those are from MIRC. They refurbish used or damaged or overstocked Fender parts. You can get lucky sometimes with those, and you can also get unlucky and end up with a neck that is, you know, twisted, or maybe the truss rod doesn't work. If you're ordering from, you know, Franklin Guitar Works, for example, they are usually really, really good about, you know, responding if something shows up and is not as described. They usually will refund you so long as you return the item, but definitely beware, because there are some sellers out there who are awful, absolutely awful, and will actively do things that sellers shouldn't and try to scam you out of your money when it comes to selling those MIRC parts. They will knowingly list things and say they are as new, or that they are in perfect working condition, or worse, they won't even ship them at all. So if you have a question about that, definitely DM me and I can give you the names of those folks to avoid. Now, as far as hardware goes, you know, there is so many different options, but I'll just name check a couple of my favorites. Obviously, Mastery. I've had Mastery bridges on so many of my offsets over the years. There's Stay Trem, who makes the best Mustang style bridge out there. There is Tough Set, who makes a really, really brilliantly designed kind of Mustang flavored bridge, but is fully locking on all of the components. So after you set them, all of the components lock into place so they do not drift or stray or move after you've set it up. There's the Bell Rock bridge. I have that installed on my AV266 Jazzmaster, and I really love the simplistic and minimal design of that bridge. And it's probably my favorite current fixed or stationary bridge option. I really have been loving the Bensonite bridges as well. That's one of my favorite recent rocking style bridges, along with the Tough Set. There is Hallen, who makes offset bridges with so many different options for the metals that are used. As far as the vibratos are concerned, my personal favorite is still just the American Vintage reissue unit. The Mastery is obviously a fantastic vibrato option. The Descendant vibrato I have tried is very unique in its offering, along again with Hallen, who has also a recessed string retaining design, and also comes in a number of different metals and alloys and finishes. Check out Mark B's channel, because he is like the hardware, the offset hardware king. He does the deep dives into vibratos and bridges and stuff like that. So if you want to see some comprehensive reviews, check his channel out. For pickups, my favorite of all time probably was Peter Leonard, the pickup wizard. I'm not sure if he's since retired. It looks like it from his website, but if you can find his pickups especially for Jazzmaster and Jaguar, those are killer. I've been working a lot with the EP Customs team, Emily and Patrick. EP Customs, they make amazing Jazzmaster and Jaguar and Mustang and Bass 6 pickups. They really make high quality pickups that are up there with my other favorite, Curtis Novak, who has long been the go-to in the game when it comes to offset guitar pickups. He has upped his options considerably over the years and now just has everything from gold foils to noiseless to like super vintage accurate historic pickups. And I just really love Curtis's pickups a ton. As far as the electronics go, I usually will buy my stuff from All Parts or Tone Shapers, depending on what I need. I find sometimes the wiring kits that you can buy from Tone Shapers end up being cheaper than buying all of the components individually. Now, how, after all is said and done, if you've done a wonderful job or your tech has done a killer job at putting together your Partscaster build, how does it compare to the genuine article, right? Like a custom shop or one of the American Vintage Series guitars. Now, obviously, if you are using genuine Fender parts like Fender necks and stuff like that, that you got a custom finish done on, it's going to have a lot more premium of a feel. It's going to have that vintage, like maybe worn in feel, for example, that you're not going to find on a bone stock brand new American Vintage 2 Jazzmaster, for example. You get to control that level of detail, whether it's you that's doing the finishing or you give instructions to your finishers. And so that is something where you can potentially emulate a custom shop guitar, which those start at the high 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 and up range for those guitars, which I can't say anything but great things about the work that I have seen from the custom shop that's, come across my bench. So if money is no object to you, then obviously the custom shop is a fantastic option for building your dream guitar. But if you are on more of a budget and you are trying to learn, you are trying to level up in your own skills, there's no better way to cut your teeth, so to speak, than getting your hands dirty, putting in the time and the elbow grease that it takes to make something that started off as just a bunch of parts and turn it into an awesome playing guitar. Now, depending on your finisher, some of the talented finishers out there rival even that of the custom shop. One standout example who I had the distinct pleasure of working with recently is Scott over at Golden Era Age Guitars out in Northern Ireland. My goodness, he did up a 59 style Sunburst Jazzmaster body for myself and my client, and the details that he was able to achieve really looked authentically so much like a vintage guitar in a way that very few others had. Joe Riggio obviously is a name that deserves all of the accolades that he has built up over the many years that he's been doing finishes. He did the finish for my my 65 Jaguar back there, and it is spot on. Like, I would not even be able to tell that it was a refinish if nobody told me. There's also Danicaster, who again also has an insane reputation for doing immense work, as well as my old buddy Josh over at Protocaster Guitars, who I met so long ago and just gets into the most minute details that you will notice on real vintage finishes and is able to accurately replicate those. So those are a couple of recommendations I have if you're looking to do a more of a detailed relic kind of thing. If you get finishes from one of those guys, that will undoubtedly stand toe to toe, if not exceed the work that I have seen from the custom shop. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention Star Guitars Finishing down in Florida. They did this gorgeous charcoal frost metallic finish. They are one of the few in the game who actually do factory new finishes, as well as a contemporary nitro type finish, which has plasticizers in it and is a bit more stable and won't sink in. It kind of acts a bit more like polyurethane and is more resistant to things like weather checking if you want your custom made guitar to look new and stay looking new for much longer. So in closing, how do Partscasters compare to a good factory produced guitar? I would say they compare favorably, especially if you didn't skimp, because the quality of the parts that you use, the quality of the techs or the finishers that you use to do your build all matter, and they will inform the quality of the final guitar. So whether you're looking for something that is more factory new, or whether you're going for an aged or a relic build that emulates, 60 plus years of wear, the choices that you make and the budget that you have to go into this build is definitely going to result in how good the final guitar is going to be. On that note as well, I would say that when it comes to buying Partscasters used from your local Facebook marketplace or Craigslist or eBay or Reverb, I definitely would say proceed with caution. Make sure that you are buying from a seller who has a good feedback rating as well as a robust return policy, because you never know what you're going to get just through pictures alone. You may think you are saving a bunch of money by buying a cheap Partscaster, but when it shows up at your door needing all kinds of different work that you weren't expecting, and then don't have a return policy, then my friend, you are going to be SOL at that point. So definitely ask a lot of questions, take a look at those ratings, and if anything, try your best to see if you can buy from those who have a history of building and selling Partscasters with a significant amount of people that have left reviews to vouch for them. Anyway, I think that's going to do it for this video. It definitely went on for longer than I wanted it to, but I really wanted this to be a comprehensive guide, especially for folks who are going to be doing their very first Partscasters, and especially so if they are going to be doing their very first offset Partscaster, because if you're doing that, then may God help your soul. What do you all think? Do you share my perspective and think it's worth it, even in just the experience alone, to go the route of building a Partscaster at least once, that the time, effort, money that goes into it is actually worthwhile and compares favorably, if not better, than factory built guitars? Or do you think it's a waste of money, or that you just don't have the patience or skills or time, and you'd rather buy something off the shelf and customize it from there? Definitely let me know down in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts. As always, if you haven't already, please hit that like and subscribe button, as well as the notification bell for new videos as soon as they drop. And don't forget to follow Totally Wired Guitars for more offset guitars building tips.